The Harley started making the noise around Bakersfield, a grinding sound deep in the engine that made Trevor Hayes wince every time he accelerated. By the time he hit the smaller roads heading east into the Central Valley farmland, the bike was coughing like a sick animal, and Trevor knew he wasn't going to make it to Fresno. He wasn't going to make it anywhere except the side of the road and a very expensive tow truck call he couldn't afford. The bike finally gave up on a quiet residential street in a small town called Oak Ridge. Population maybe 3,000 if you counted the dogs and farm animals. Trevor managed to coast to the curb in front of a modest ranch house with a chain-link fence and a lawn that needed mowing. The engine died with a shudder, and Trevor sat there for a moment in the August heat, sweat running down his back under his leather vest, trying to calculate exactly how screwed he was. Pretty screwed, he decided. He had maybe $60 in his wallet and another $40 in his checking account. Not nearly enough for a tow, let alone the kind of repairs the Harley probably needed. His phone showed 2 bars of signal, but a battery at 15%. He could call someone, but who? His ex-wife would laugh. His buddies from the club were all working or broke themselves. His sister might help, but she'd already bailed him out twice this year, and he'd promised her he'd get his life together. Trevor was 38 years old and felt like he'd been 38 for about a decade. Construction work when he could get it, unemployment when he couldn't, a divorce 3 years back that had taken what little he had. No kids, no house, no savings, just the bike and the clothes on his back, and a stubborn refusal to admit that maybe he'd made some wrong turns somewhere along the way. He climbed off the bike and looked around. The street was quiet, lined with small houses that had seen better days but were still loved. You could tell by the flower boxes and the painted mailboxes and the swing sets in the backyards. Working-class neighborhood, people who took care of what they had, even when what they had wasn't much. Trevor knew the type. He was the type. That's when he saw it. On the corner of the yard in front of the house where he'd broken down, there was a card table with a handmade sign, lemonade 50 cents. Behind the table sat a kid, maybe 9 or 10 years old, with dark hair and serious brown eyes. The kid was wearing a t-shirt that was too big and shorts that had seen better days, and he was looking at Trevor with the kind of wariness that suggested he'd learned early that the world wasn't always friendly. Trevor walked over slowly, not wanting to scare the kid. "Hey there. That lemonade any good?" The kid nodded. "My grandma's recipe. Best in town." Bold claim. Trevor pulled out his wallet and checked. $63 to be exact. He pulled out a dollar bill. "I'll take one." "Keep the change." The kid's eyes widened slightly. He poured lemonade from a plastic pitcher into a paper cup, concentrating hard like this was the most important task in the world. Then he handed it to Trevor with both hands, careful not to spill. Trevor took a sip. It was good. Tart and sweet in just the right balance. Ice cold despite the heat. "You're right. That is the best lemonade in town." The kid allowed himself a small smile. "Thanks. You want to sit down? You look hot." There was a folding chair next to the table, and Trevor hesitated. He should probably be calling a tow truck, figuring out his next move, not sitting around drinking lemonade with a kid. But the lemonade was cold, and the shade was appealing, and honestly, Trevor wasn't in any hurry to face the reality of his situation. "Sure, thanks." He sat down, and the kid poured himself a cup and sat in the other chair. They sat in silence for a moment. Then the kid said, "Your motorcycle broke?" "Yeah, engine gave out. Not sure what's wrong exactly, but it doesn't sound good." My dad knew about motorcycles. He could fix anything. Trevor noticed the past tense. "Not around anymore." "He died 2 years ago. Heart attack. He was only 35. "I'm sorry, kid." "That's rough." The kid shrugged, but Trevor could see the hurt underneath the casual gesture. "It's okay. Mom and Grandma take care of me now. Mom works 2 jobs, and Grandma lives with us. That's her recipe." He gestured to the lemonade. "What's your name?" "Carlos. Carlos Martinez." "I'm Trevor Hayes. Nice to meet you, Carlos." They shook hands, formal and serious, and Trevor had to suppress a smile at the kid's gravity. Carlos reminded him of himself at that age, too grown up too soon, trying to be the man of the house before he was ready. "So what's the lemonade stand for? Saving up for something?" Carlos looked down at his cup. "Yeah, a bike. A real bike, not a kid's bike. There's one at the shop in town, a mountain bike. Red and black. It costs $250. He said it like it was $1 million, which at 50 cents a cup it might as well be. That's a lot of lemonade. I know. I've been out here every day this summer. I've saved $83 so far. Carlos's voice held a mix of pride and frustration. But summer's almost over. School starts in 2 weeks. I won't be able to do the stand as much. Why not ask your mom for the bike? Carlos shook his head. She's already working so hard. We don't have extra money. Grandma says I should save up and buy it myself. Says it'll mean more that way. Your grandma's a smart lady. They sat in silence again. Trevor finished his lemonade and Carlos poured him another cup without asking, waving away Trevor's attempt to pay. On the house, the kid said, and Trevor felt something twist in his chest at the gesture. An old pickup truck pulled up, and a woman got out. She was maybe mid-30s, tired-looking, wearing scrubs from a medical office or hospital. Her face was drawn but pretty, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She saw Trevor and her expression immediately became guarded. Carlos? Everything okay? Mom! This is Trevor. His motorcycle broke down and I gave him lemonade. He said it was the best in town. The woman, Carlos's mother, relaxed slightly, but still kept herself between Trevor and her son. Trevor stood up and backed away a few steps, giving her space, showing he wasn't a threat. I'm sorry to be in front of your house, Trevor said. Bike gave out right here. I was just having some lemonade while I figure out what to do. You a mechanic? She asked. I know enough to get by. Just don't have the tools with me to diagnose what's wrong. My late husband was a mechanic. His tools are still in the garage. You're welcome to use them if it would help. Just. She glanced at Carlos. Stay where I can see you. Understood. Thank you, ma'am. I'm Trevor Hayes. Rosa Martinez. And you've already met Carlos. She looked at her son. Mijo, how's business today? Made $4. Trevor gave me $1 tip. Rosa's face softened when she looked at her son, all the hardness melting away to show the love underneath. That's good, baby. Keep it up. I'm going to change and start dinner. You stay right here where I can see you from the window, okay? Okay, Mom. Rosa went inside, and Trevor could see her watching from the kitchen window. He didn't blame her. Single mother with a kid. Strange man on a motorcycle broken down in front of her house. He'd be cautious too. Carlos showed Trevor to the garage. It was neat and organized, tools hung on pegboards, a workbench against the back wall. Everything had a place, and everything was clean despite being well used. This had been a workspace where someone had taken pride in their craft. Your dad took good care of his tools, Trevor said. He took good care of everything. Mom says he was the most careful person she ever knew. Carlos ran his hand along the workbench. I try to keep it like he had it. I come out here sometimes and just sit. It makes me feel like he's still here. Trevor felt that twist in his chest again. I bet he'd be proud of you. The lemonade stand, taking care of his workspace. You think so? I know so. Trevor grabbed some tools and went to work on the bike. Carlos watched, asking questions, handing Trevor tools when asked. The kid was sharp, catching on quickly to what Trevor was doing. After about 20 minutes, Trevor had the answer. Camshaft bearing, he said, wiping grease from his hands. It's shot. That's why it was making that grinding noise. Can you fix it? With the right parts? Yeah. But I don't have the parts, and I don't have the money to buy them right now. Trevor sat back on his heels, the reality of his situation settling over him like a heavy blanket. I'm going to have to call for a tow, get it to a shop, figure out how to pay for repairs. How much does it cost? The parts? Part itself is probably around $150. Labor at a shop, probably another $250 to $300. $500 total, give or take. Trevor laughed without humor. Might as well be $1 million. I've got $60 to my name. Carlos was quiet, thinking. Then he said, What if you fixed it yourself? With my dad's tools? Then you'd only need the parts. Kid, I can't just use your dad's garage. Why not? The tools are just sitting there. Dad would have wanted them used. He always said tools were meant for fixing things, not for looking at. Carlos's voice was earnest, pleading. You could stay here while you fix it. We have a couch. It pulls out. Carlos, I appreciate it, but that's up to your mom, and I don't think... I'll ask her. Wait here. Carlos ran into the house before Trevor could stop him. Through the kitchen window, Trevor could see Carlos talking to Rosa, gesturing animatedly. Rosa kept shaking her head, but Carlos was persistent. Finally, Rosa came outside, wiping her hands on a dish towel. Carlos says you need parts, but you can fix the bike yourself if you have them. Yes, ma'am. But I can't afford the parts right now. I'll figure something out. I can call someone. Who? Carlos says you don't have anyone to call. Trevor felt his face heat. The kid's got good ears. But he's right. I'm kind of on my own right now. Rosa studied him for a long moment. Trevor met her eyes, trying to look trustworthy, knowing he probably just looked desperate. Finally, she said, I have $300 in my emergency fund. I can loan you enough for the parts. You fix your bike using Miguel's tools, and when you get back on your feet, you pay me back. Fair? Trevor stared at her. You don't know me. Why would you loan me money? Because Carlos likes you. My son is a good judge of character. His father taught him that. And because I remember what it's like to be stuck with no options. Someone helped us once after Miguel died. I'm paying it forward. What if I don't pay you back? Then I guess I'm out the money. But I don't think that's going to happen. You've got honest eyes. She paused. And you can stay on the couch until the bike's fixed. But there are rules. You stay out of my house unless invited. You don't go near Carlos unless I'm around. You do dishes after dinner and help with yard work. And the first time I feel uncomfortable, you're gone. Understood? Yes, ma'am. Understood, and thank you. I'll pay you back, I promise. I believe you. Rosa turned to go back inside, then stopped. Oh, and Trevor? Carlos's grandmother will be home from her shift at the hospital in an hour. Just so you know, she keeps a shotgun in her bedroom and knows how to use it. Trevor couldn't help but smile. Noted. That night, Trevor ate dinner with the Martinez family, Rosa, Carlos, and Carlos's grandmother, Elena, who was indeed as formidable as promised. She looked Trevor up and down like she was assessing livestock, asked him pointed questions about his background and intentions, and finally declared, You can stay. But I'm a light sleeper, and I sleep with one eye open. Entiendes? I understand, ma'am. The food was simple but delicious. Rice, beans, chicken cooked with tomatoes and peppers. They ate at a small table in the kitchen, and Trevor couldn't remember the last time he'd had a home-cooked meal with other people. The conversation flowed around him. Carlos talking about his lemonade stand, Rosa discussing her shifts at the medical clinic where she worked, Elena complaining about the hospital administration but clearly loving her job as a nurse. After dinner, Trevor washed dishes as promised while Carlos dried. The kid chattered about his dad, about the bike shop in town, about school starting soon, and how he was nervous about 4th grade. Why nervous? Trevor asked. New teacher. Mom says she's strict, and some of the kids are mean. They make fun of me because my clothes are old, and because we don't have a lot of money. Kids can be cruel. They don't know any better. Did kids make fun of you when you were little? Trevor thought about his own childhood, bouncing between his mom's apartment and his dad's trailer, wearing hand-me-downs, free lunch at school. Yeah, they did. But you know what I learned? The kids who make fun of you for being poor are usually the ones who don't understand what it means to work hard for what you have. Your mom works 2 jobs. Your grandma works at the hospital. You run a lemonade stand to save for a bike instead of just asking for it. That's character, Carlos. That's worth more than new clothes. Carlos absorbed this. My dad used to say something like that. He said being poor doesn't make you less. It just makes you stronger. Your dad was a smart man. That night, Trevor lay on the pull-out couch in the living room, staring at the ceiling. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the air conditioner and the occasional car passing outside. He thought about how he'd ended up here, the series of choices and chances that had led to his bike breaking down in front of this particular house. If he'd left Bakersfield 10 minutes earlier or later, he'd have broken down somewhere else. He never would have met Carlos or Rosa or gotten this chance. It felt like fate, like the universe was giving him something, though he wasn't sure he deserved it. The next morning, Trevor was up early. He made coffee, careful to be quiet, and sat on the front porch watching the sunrise. Rosa came out in her scrubs, keys in hand, clearly headed to work. Couldn't sleep? She asked. Used to early mornings. Construction hours. Carlos said you do construction. When I can get it. Work's been spotty lately. That's why I was heading to Fresno. Heard there might be some jobs there. Rosa nodded. Well, The auto parts store opens at 8. Carlos can show you where it is. I'll leave money on the counter. She hesitated. Trevor, I'm trusting you with my son today. Don't make me regret it. I won't. I promise. After Rosa left, Trevor and Carlos walked to the auto parts store. It was 6 blocks, through quiet residential streets that reminded Trevor of the neighborhood where he'd grown up. Small houses, big trees, people who knew each other. The kind of place where kids still rode bikes and neighbors still talked over fences. At the store, Trevor ordered the parts he needed. The clerk said they'd have them by tomorrow. Carlos asked questions the whole way home, about motorcycles, about construction, about where Trevor had been and where he was going. The kid was hungry for adult male attention, Trevor realized, hungry for someone to fill the dad-shaped hole his father had left. They set up the lemonade stand again, and Trevor sat with Carlos through the hot morning, watching cars pass, making small talk with customers. Most people just wanted lemonade, but a few stopped to chat. An older man asked about Trevor's bike. A woman told Carlos his father had fixed her car once and had been the most honest mechanic she'd ever met. A teenager bought 2 cups and left a $5 bill saying, "Keep the change, little man." By noon, Carlos had made $7. He carefully added it to his mason jar, counting out his total. $90 now, only $160 to go. You'll get there, Trevor said. You think so? I know so. You're determined. That counts for a lot. That afternoon, while they waited for customers, Trevor taught Carlos some basic tool knowledge, how to use a socket wrench, the difference between flathead and Phillips screwdrivers, how to check oil in a car. Carlos absorbed it all like a sponge, and Trevor found himself enjoying the teaching. He'd never had kids, had never wanted them during his marriage. But sitting here with Carlos, passing on knowledge, felt good in a way he hadn't expected. Elena came home from her shift and made lunch, sandwiches and fruit, simple but filling. She watched Trevor and Carlos interact, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Finally, she said in Spanish to Carlos, "Este hombre es bueno. Tu padre lo aprobaría." Carlos grinned. Trevor looked at him questioningly, and the kid translated, "She says you're a good man. My dad would approve." Trevor felt his throat tighten. Tell her thank you. The parts arrived the next day, and Trevor spent the afternoon in the garage working on the bike. Carlos watched, handing him tools, asking questions. Trevor explained what he was doing and why, walking Carlos through each step. The kid had natural mechanical aptitude, understanding concepts quickly, making connections Trevor had to point out. You're good at this, Trevor said. You've got your dad's brain for machines. You think I could be a mechanic someday? Like Dad? I think you could be anything you want. But yeah, you'd make a good mechanic. Rosa came home early that day, her shift cut short due to low patient volume. She found them in the garage, Trevor elbow deep in the motorcycle, while Carlos held a flashlight. She stood in the doorway watching for a moment, and when Trevor looked up, he saw tears in her eyes. You okay? He asked. Yeah, just... Carlos hasn't been in the garage much since Miguel died. It hurt too much, but seeing him in here now, learning, excited, she wiped her eyes. Miguel would be happy. That night at dinner, Rosa made tamales from scratch, a special meal that took hours of preparation. It's to celebrate, she said, when Trevor tried to protest the trouble. Carlos is back in the garage. The motorcycle is almost fixed. And we have a guest. These are reasons to celebrate. They ate and talked, and Trevor found himself sharing stories he hadn't told anyone in years. About growing up poor but loved, about his father, who'd worked himself to death at 50, about his own mistakes and wrong turns. Rosa and Elena listened without judgment, and Carlos hung on every word. Why don't you have kids? Carlos asked at one point. Carlos? Rosa's voice was sharp. That's too personal. It's okay, Trevor said. He thought about how to answer. My ex-wife and I never had kids. We weren't ready, and then we weren't together anymore. I guess it just never happened for me. That's sad, Carlos said. You'd be a good dad. Trevor looked at this kid who barely knew him, but had somehow seen something in him worth believing in. Thanks, Carlos. That means a lot. It took 3 days to fix the motorcycle. 3 days of working in Miguel's garage, teaching Carlos, eating meals with the Martinez family, sleeping on their couch. 3 days of feeling like he was part of something, like he belonged somewhere. Trevor had forgotten what that felt like. When the bike was finally fixed, Trevor took it for a test ride. It ran smoothly, the engine purring like it had before the bearing went bad. He came back to find Carlos waiting anxiously on the front porch. "It works," Carlos said, his face lighting up. "It works. Thanks to your dad's tools and your help." Trevor climbed off the bike and looked at the house, at this place that had given him shelter when he needed it. "I should probably get going. Get to Fresno, look for that work." Carlos's face fell. "You're leaving?" "I've got to, buddy. I've got to find work, get back on my feet. But I'll pay your mom back, I promise." "When?" "Soon as I can." Rosa came outside then, like she'd been waiting for this conversation. "Trevor, before you go, can I talk to you?" They walked to the garage, away from Carlos. Rosa leaned against the workbench and crossed her arms. "Carlos has gotten attached to you. He's going to be heartbroken when you leave." "I know. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." "I'm not blaming you. It's natural. You've been the first positive male presence in his life since Miguel died. He needs that. But Trevor, if you're going to stay in touch, you have to actually stay in touch. Don't promise to call and then disappear. Don't say you'll pay us back and then vanish. Carlos has already lost his father. He doesn't need to lose another man he looks up to. I'll stay in touch, and I'll pay you back. I'm not going to disappear." Rosa studied him. "I believe you. But here's the thing. There's work here, in Oak Ridge. My friend owns a construction company. They're expanding, need good workers. Pay is decent, union benefits. If you want, I can call her, get you an interview." Trevor stared at her. "Why would you do that?" "Because you've been good for Carlos. And because you need a break, Trevor. You need somewhere stable, somewhere you can actually get back on your feet, instead of just chasing rumors of work in the next town over." She paused. "And selfishly, I'd like Carlos to have someone around. Not to replace Miguel, no one could do that, but someone who can teach him things, be a positive influence, if you're interested." Trevor felt something unfold in his chest, something that felt dangerously close to hope. "I'm interested." "Good. Then stay. Get the job. Get settled. And when you've got some money together, you can pay me back and we'll call it even." "Rosa, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll be here for Carlos. That's all I ask." Trevor got the job. Rosa's friend Patricia ran a small but growing construction company and needed experienced workers. Trevor interviewed on a Tuesday and started on Wednesday. The pay was better than he'd hoped, and Patricia offered to advance him his first week's wages so he could get a cheap room at a weekly motel. But Elena had other ideas. "The garage has a bathroom and a space heater. You can stay there until you've saved enough for a real place. The couch is too small for you anyway." So Trevor moved into Miguel's garage. He bought a cot and some basic supplies, kept his things neat and organized, treated the space with respect. He paid Rosa back $300 from his first paycheck, and when she tried to refuse it, he insisted. "You trusted me when you had no reason to. That's worth more than money. But take the money anyway." Rosa took it, and Trevor saw her eyes get wet. "This is going into Carlos's bike fund. He's so close." August turned to September, and Carlos went back to school. But every afternoon when he got home, he'd find Trevor in the garage or working on some project around the house. Trevor fixed the fence, repaired the porch steps, changed the oil in Rosa's old car. Little things that needed doing, but that Rosa hadn't had time or money to address. On Saturdays, Trevor and Carlos worked on projects together. They built a skateboard ramp in the backyard. They fixed up an old bicycle Trevor found at a garage sale, so Carlos would have transportation, while he saved for the mountain bike. They cleaned out the gutters and painted the garage door. Trevor taught, and Carlos learned, and slowly the kids started to laugh more, to seem lighter, like some burden had been lifted. In October, Carlos's lemonade stand fund hit $200. He was so close to his goal that Trevor could see the excitement practically radiating off him. But then, the first real rain came, and weekend lemonade sales became impossible. Carlos was frustrated, worried summer was too far gone, and he'd never reach his goal. That's when Trevor had an idea. He talked to Patricia at work, and she agreed. The construction company was having a big open house to celebrate their expansion. They needed someone to run a beverage stand. Would Carlos be interested? Carlos's eyes went huge when Trevor told him. Really? A real job? Real job. 8 hours, minimum wage. That's about $60 for the day. Combined with what you've got saved, you'll have enough for the bike. Carlos threw his arms around Trevor's waist. Thank you, thank you, thank you. The open house was on a Saturday in late October. Carlos showed up early with his grandmother's lemonade recipe, a new poster board sign he'd made, and a level of professional seriousness that made the adults smile. He sold lemonade and iced tea all day, chatting with customers, making change, being responsible and polite. Patricia was impressed. That's a good kid you've got there, she told Trevor. He's not mine. But yeah, he's a great kid. Could have fooled me. He looks at you like you hung the moon. That evening, Rosa drove Carlos to the bike shop, with Trevor following on his motorcycle. The red and black mountain bike was still in the window, still waiting. Carlos walked in with $250 in cash, money he'd earned, cup by cup, over 4 months of work. The shop owner, an older man named George, counted the money slowly. Then he looked at Carlos and said, "You know what? This bike's been sitting here all summer. I'll knock $20 off for a kid who worked this hard for it. $230, and I'll throw in a helmet." Carlos looked like he might cry. Trevor felt his own throat tighten. Rosa put her hand on her son's shoulder and said, "Thank you, George." "That's very kind." Carlos rode his bike home with Trevor and Rosa, following slowly behind in the car. The kid was wobbly at first. The bike was bigger than what he was used to, but he got the hang of it quickly. By the time they got home, he was riding with confidence, a huge grin on his face. That night, they celebrated with Elena's tamales again and a cake Rosa had made. Carlos couldn't stop talking about his bike, about how he was going to ride it to school, about how the other kids were going to think it was cool. His joy was infectious, and Trevor found himself smiling more than he had in years. Later, after Carlos had gone to bed, Trevor sat on the porch with Rosa. The night was cool, stars visible overhead in the dark sky. "You changed his life," Rosa said quietly. "The bike, yes, but more than that. You gave him hope. You showed him that hard work pays off and that good men still exist in the world." "He changed my life too," Trevor said. "I was broke and lost when I pulled up in front of your house. Now I've got a job, a place to stay, people who care about me, I guess. Haven't had that in a long time." "So you're staying? In Oak Ridge?" "Yeah, I'm staying, if that's okay with you." "More than okay." Rosa was quiet for a moment. "Miguel would have liked you. You have the same kind of heart he did, the kind that helps people just because it's right, not because you get something out of it. I got plenty out of it. I got my life back." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars. Trevor thought about the chain of events that had led him here. The broken bearing, the lemonade stand, the 50-cent cup that had somehow opened up a future he hadn't known he needed. He thought about fate and chance and the way small kindnesses could ripple outward into life-changing waves. The weeks turned into months. Trevor moved out of the garage and into a small apartment across town, but he was at the Martinez house most evenings and weekends. He and Carlos worked on projects. He helped Rosa with repairs and yard work. He ate dinner with the family, celebrated birthdays and holidays, became part of their lives. Carlos thrived. His grades improved, his confidence grew, and he talked constantly about becoming a mechanic like his dad someday. The bullies at school backed off when they saw Carlos arrive on his impressive bike, and when they didn't, Carlos stood up for himself with a confidence he'd learned from Trevor's example. Rosa started dating again, carefully, and Trevor encouraged her. "You deserve to be happy," he told her. "Miguel would want that for you." "What about you?" Rosa asked. "Don't you deserve to be happy too?" Trevor thought about that. "I am happy. More than I've been in years. I've got work I'm good at, people who matter to me, a purpose. That's enough." But the truth was more complicated. Trevor had started to feel things for Rosa that went beyond friendship. The way she laughed at his jokes, the way she trusted him with her son, the way she looked at him sometimes when she thought he wasn't watching, but he was afraid to act on it, afraid to risk the fragile family structure they'd built. It was Elena who finally pushed him. On Christmas Eve, after Carlos had gone to bed and Rosa was cleaning up the kitchen, Elena pulled Trevor aside. "You love her," the old woman said. It wasn't a question. Trevor didn't bother denying it. "Yes." "And she loves you. Anyone with eyes can see it, so why are you both dancing around each other like scared teenagers?" because I don't want to ruin what we have. Carlos needs stability. Rosa needs support. If I try for more and it doesn't work out, and if you don't try and you both end up alone and full of regret. Elena shook her head. Life is short, mijo. Miguel taught me that when he died so young. You don't get second chances very often. When you do, you take them. Trevor found Rosa on the back porch, looking at the lights they'd strung up together. He sat down next to her, his heart hammering. Rosa, I need to tell you something. She turned to him, and in her eyes he saw that she already knew. Okay. I know this might be complicated. I know there's Carlos to think about, and your memories of Miguel, and 100 reasons why this might be a bad idea. But I have to tell you, I love you. I've loved you for months. And I understand if you don't feel the same way, or if you're not ready, or if you want me to just be Carlos's friend, but I had to tell you. Rosa was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Miguel's been gone for 3 years. I've spent those 3 years surviving, working, taking care of Carlos, but I haven't been living. Not really. And then you showed up, broken down and broke, and somehow you reminded me what living feels like. So I love you too, Trevor Hayes, and it terrifies me because I lost one man I loved, and I don't know if I can survive losing another. But Elena's right. Life is short. We don't get second chances often. I want to take this one. Trevor kissed her there on the back porch, gentle and tentative, and Rosa kissed him back. It felt like coming home. It felt like hope. They took it slow for Carlos's sake, making sure he was comfortable with the relationship evolving. But Carlos surprised them both by being thrilled. Does this mean Trevor's going to stay forever? He asked. Would you like that? Rosa asked. Yeah. Then he can teach me more stuff and come to my soccer games and help me with homework and... Carlos rattled off a dozen things, his excitement infectious. Trevor and Rosa got married the following summer, a small ceremony in the backyard, with Elena officiating and Carlos serving as best man. It was simple and perfect, exactly what they all needed. Trevor adopted Carlos officially 6 months after that. The paperwork was just a formality. He'd been Carlos's father in every way that mattered since that first afternoon at the lemonade stand. But having it legal, having it official, mattered to all of them. Years passed. Carlos grew up with 2 fathers, one who'd given him life and taught him about honor and hard work, and one who'd given him guidance and love when he needed it most. He became a mechanic, just like he'd always planned, taking over George's bike shop when the old man retired. Trevor and Rosa had 2 more kids, a girl and a boy, and Carlos was the best big brother they could have asked for. The house on that quiet street in Oak Ridge grew and changed, but it always remained home, the place where a broken-down biker and a grieving widow and a kid with a lemonade stand had found each other and built something beautiful. On the anniversary of the day Trevor's bike broke down, they always celebrated. Rosa would make Elena's tamales. Even after Elena passed, the recipe lived on. Carlos would set up his old lemonade stand sign as decoration, and Trevor would tell the story again of how a 50-cent cup of lemonade had changed 2 lives, or really had changed all their lives. I was lost, Trevor would say, Carlos's younger siblings hanging on every word. My bike broke down right out front, and I thought my life was over. But then I saw this kid at a lemonade stand, and he gave me the best 50-cent cup of lemonade I've ever had, and everything changed. Because of the lemonade? The youngest would ask. Because of the kindness, Trevor would correct. The lemonade was just lemonade. But Carlos and his mom and grandmother, they saw a stranger who needed help, and they helped him. They didn't have to. They didn't know if I'd pay them back or disappear or cause trouble, but they helped anyway. And that kindness saved my life. Carlos, now a grown man with his own family, would add, and Trevor saved ours too. After Dad died, we were stuck. Mom was working herself to death, Grandma was worried, and I was just lost. But Trevor showed up and reminded us that families can be made, not just born. That love comes in unexpected packages. And Rosa, sitting next to Trevor with his hand in hers, would smile and say, all because a motorcycle broke down at exactly the right moment, in exactly the right place. Some people call that chance. I call it fate. Trevor would look around at his family, at Rosa, at Carlos, at their kids, at the life they'd built together, and he'd think about that hot August day when his bike had given out in front of a kid's lemonade stand. He'd think about how close he'd come to calling a tow truck and leaving, to never knowing these people, to never having this life. And he'd think about how sometimes, when everything seems broken and hopeless, the universe gives you exactly what you need in the form of a 50-cent cup of lemonade and a kid with serious brown eyes and a heart bigger than the world. Sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. Sometimes family finds you when you've stopped looking. Sometimes a broken-down biker and a kid selling lemonade can save each other's lives. That was the real story. That was the truth. And it had all started with kindness, with generosity, with people choosing to help instead of looking away. That was the legacy Trevor wanted to pass on to his kids. Not just that hard work paid off, but that kindness multiplied, that helping others helped yourself, that the smallest gestures could create the biggest changes. The biker had broken down outside a kid's lemonade stand, and that 50-cent cup had changed 2 lives. But really, it had changed so many more than that. It had changed everyone who heard the story and decided to be kinder. It had changed everyone who saw what Trevor and Rosa and Carlos had built and believed in second chances. It had changed the world, one small act of generosity at a time. And it all started with lemonade.